Time for the work session of the North Kingstown School Committee. If everyone could please rise and say the pledge to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, Lorraine, if you could please call the roll.
Kimberly Page.
Here.
Larry Cerisi.
Here.
Linda Avanzado.
Here.
John Viscarda.
Here.
Cheryl Clarkin. Robert Jones.
Here.
William Munch.
Here.
Julia Held.
Here.
Thank you.
Lorraine, if you could also then please call the calendars.
August 15th, Policy Subcommittee meeting, 8:30 a.m., Central Administration Building. August 15th also, 4 p.m., Facilities Subcommittee, Central Administration Building. August 24th, 10 a.m., kickoff to kindergarten registration at North Kingstown High School. That was added to your calendars. August 27th, first day of school for students. Also, August 27th at 7 p.m., school committee meeting, North Kingstown High School. September 2nd, Labor Day, all schools and offices closed. Thank you.
Thank you. I don't believe there are any recognitions or presentations. Is there anyone who had anything? All right. And moving on, we come to citizens' comments. Do we have any citizens for comment?
Everyone signed up.
Okay. Anybody? All right. All right, tonight is a work session, so if there is something that someone would like to comment on, prior to our voting, you just need to come up here to the mic and clear your throat if I don't see you. So, thank you very much. All right, that brings us to the superintendent's report.
Thank you. Welcome back, everybody. I just wanted to briefly make mention that the work on the summer work that has been paid for last year's bond is going well. Most of our schools are right. All of our schools are on target for opening the school year on time. And Mrs. King will talk a little bit more about that once we get to that item in this session. That's about it for now.
All right. If we don't have any other routine items, then that brings us to the consent agenda. I know Dr. Auger has asked that we pull off of the agenda D4, and we do not have any memorandum of agreement for E11. So those are being pulled off of tonight's agenda. Is there anything that anyone would like to exempt?
Yes, thank you. I'd like to exempt B2 and D5.
So B2.
D, Delta. I'm sorry.
And I'm sorry, Ms. Jones, what was the other one? D5.
D5, and I'll just throw out C1 only because I was under the impression that there was already discussion we might have to move a date anyway.
Anything else to exempt?
I want to just, A, please, just have a quick comment on that. So, homeschooling?
Which was that, A7?
No. A, homeschooling.
Okay. Right. And on the minutes for the executive session of June 25th, 2013, Mr. Busgarden and Mr. Cerisi, are you?
Yeah, I'll exempt that so we can do that as a separate vote.
Okay. Okay, so that is B2. All right. Do I have a motion to approve the rest of the consent agenda?
So moved.
Is that a second?
Second?
All right. All those in favor say aye.
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 All those opposed? Motion passes. All right. So the first thing is A, Mr. Mudge.
Yes, I noticed there's a tremendous amount of children on that list, something like 55, if I'm not mistaken. Just one question. Do we get state aid for these folks? could have asked that.
They're counted in our census, so yeah. Because they're students, they're residents, so I'll double check
Okay,
that on you.
yeah,
They're
I
counted
might
as
have
one of
called
our
you.
students.
I just,
Yep.
no problem, I'll look into it anyway. Thank you.
So do I have a motion to approve A?
Second?
All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, motion carries. That brings us to B2. Do I have a motion to approve B2?
So moved?
Do I have a second?
Second?
Thank you. All those in favor of approving B2, say aye.
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 All those opposed? Or all those who abstain?
Abstain?
Thank you. All right, that brings us to C1.
Yeah, thank you, Ms. Page. I'll admit to a little confusion, because I actually thought it was the school committee calendar, which I was mentioned that we might have to change, but since we're talking about the school calendar, I guess, and I know Dr. Ogier mentioned this, so maybe just for my own clarification and to have the open discussion about it, if you could just, I think the revision is this due to Good Friday, Dr. Ogier? Is that the?
Yes.
Okay, so you just, and again, I know you sent it out, but maybe
Sure.
take a minute just to clear, because
When-
I guess is this going to be a continuing issue, or, and maybe just give you the floor to explain it?
Okay. It's, I guess the answer to that question is yes and no. We, as a committee, approved of having Good Friday as a workday. Since that point happened, I needed to actually clear up the language in the support staff contract that has that as a holiday. The ESP approved that change, but with the contingency that it would have to be that case for the remainder of their contract, which is 2 years. In the meantime, I also noticed that in this particular year, and I should have caught this earlier, I apologize, but that the Good Friday actually comes on the day before the April vacation break. There are a lot of requests already for the day before an April vacation break to use a personal day, and most of the time, unless there's a circumstance completely out of the person's control, I deny that. In this case, I probably would not have any recourse because it's a religious holiday, and they could just use that as their excuse to take the holiday, and therefore I would be worried that we would run into a staffing problem. And if that were the case, I couldn't go back and just change it for the next year without getting some kind of agreement from ESP. We couldn't do that unilaterally as a school committee. So that's why I'm looking for this year to have everything on the calendar that we discussed be the same, except for that Good Friday day. That would be a holiday. I would be sure that the staff that I talked to see that as a logical way of doing things, since it is a popular day to ask for a personal day anyway, the day before a break. And any agreement about Good Friday in the future, what I would propose is that we talk to ESP about continuing with Good Friday as a school day, but only in years that it doesn't come adjacent to a week vacation in April. And I believe that in most years it would not, maybe like 5 out of every 6 years it would not. In the year that it would, we would take it as a vacation day, save the heartache.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Ogier.
All right, do I have a motion to approve C1?
So moved.
Second?
All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed, motion passes. All right, that brings us to D2.
Um,
Mr. Jones.
Thank you, Mrs. Page. And I've had a brief discussion with Dr. Ogier on this, and just for the rest of the committee, my concern on the lease buyout, obviously there's a concern with the current vendor, and I do support, with this kind of, it's like computers, upgrading when you can. My concern, though, with the way this was structured was whether we had costed it out using the fair market value approach, since I don't believe there's ever an intent to own the copy machines at the end of the lease. and to see if that way of structuring the lease might be cheaper than the dollar buyout, considering that we use the fair market value with the laptop purchase that we approved in June.
Yes, I did review this, and the fair market value on these leases, the difference here is that the property taxes come into play and make the fair market value option higher, because the leasing company has to pay property taxes to the town, in which then they just turn around and charge it back to us. So it wasn't hugely higher, but right now we're paying approximately $6,300 a year, a month. The proposal in front of you is $6,400, and the fair market value lease would be approximately $6,600. Now, I do agree with you. I tend to not want a bunch of equipment hanging around here, old copy machines, old laptops or whatnot. But this, the way this lease is set up, it allows us to have the company take those copiers back, or we can buy them out. If there happens to be one or two that don't have a whole lot of use, we want to put one extra one somewhere and we own it, we certainly have that option. But this lease, the way it's set up with a $1 buyout, is approximately $300 cheaper per month than what we're paying, more per month than what we're paying now. So we did definitely look at that.
Are there any other questions on D2? Mr. Lynch?
Yes.
Yes, Mr. Mudge.
Yeah, I was kind of looking at this list, and it kind of interests me because I just recently purchased a Lexmark printer, laser printer. And, it's for like $250, $300. And it's actually I purchased it last year, I should say. And it's worked fabulously, like 22 words a minute normally, pages a minute and everything else. And I'm looking at some of these, and I asked the question is, we're paying, for example, and I noticed, and I'm just picking out one room, and, not to pick on anybody, but, like room 314 and third floor of the high school, we got in there something like $483, a month for cost for those things for several billion years. You could probably buy a dozen real good Lexmark, printers, and probably get a very, very good price. So I'm just wondering if we would not, in fact, be better to start on some of the floors that have lesser demands, going to the the quality Lexmark type printers or, HP printers or laser printers, because, this is quite a monthly bill here. And
Mr. Mudge, you own stock in Lexmark or something?
No, I just bought them, but I tell you, it's a good machine. The last one I had was a Samsung, believe it or not. But,
Well, actually, when you really need to, and we as a district, I've discussed this with our IT manager, you really need to move away from your desktop printers, because your desktop printers cost you about 10 times more per page than these copy machines do. So while those printers are really cheap, and there were a lot of companies out there for a lot of years saying, I'll give you the printer for free, of course they were, because they were killing you in the toner. So I don't know if you've replaced the toner yet, Mr. Mudge, on that machine, but some of them tend to be very, very expensive, and that's one area that we are looking at. So this price per copy, even on the color ones that we use, is significantly less than having a bunch of desktop printers. The other issue is the IT support required for desktop printers. There's a jam, something doesn't work quite right, my toner doesn't work, I don't know how to put it in. So the desktop printers in some cases might be good, but as a district-wide, adding more desktop printers is not an area that you tend to want to go to for IT-wise.
Well, they have pretty good commercial units that, doctors' offices and things like that can handle these loads, and I know that I pay, I don't know, like $70 for a laser cartridge, and that's what, I should figure that out, that's like 5,000, is it 5,000 or 8,000 pages, so, anyway, I just wondered if we had looked into that to see if in fact it might be more advantageous in some cases to, buy some of these machines.
Do I have a motion on D2?
Second?
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries.
Total cost analysis.
All right, that brings us to E5. Mr. Jones.
Thank you, Mrs. Page. Just for, again, I had a conversation with Dr. Auger on this, so for the other committee members, I don't disagree with the concept of getting out in front and doing,
You're looking at D5, I believe, not E.
right,
Yeah.
the roof.
No, I thought
Oh, okay.
Kim said E5.
I
Oh.
did say E5.
Yeah.
That's what I heard you.
I think he meant D5.
I'm sorry,
Yeah,
I
okay.
said
Oh, you
don't.
said it right.
Sorry, okay.
Yeah.
All right,
Yeah, no, I have no issue with the middle school summer teacher.
okay. So E5.
No.
D like David, D like,
I'm sorry, I'm
D-
still
D5.
saying it wrong. I'm stuck with E, okay? So, Mr. Jones, sorry.
Sorry.
Thank you.
D5.
Yes, thank you. And I think it's wise to, have this kind of stuff tied to getting out in front, so we're not surprised by stuff. For the other committee members, my discussion with Dr. Auger really centered on that, this is an area to me that when you talk about preventative building maintenance is not just a school issue, it's a town issue. And is this possibly an area, by delaying this briefly, we can at least have Dr. Auger and Mary engage the town to see, is this something that maybe the town might want to consider doing on their side as well, so we can combine and generate potentially some efficiencies in terms of just moving the needle a little bit more towards where we think of as a town, collectively our buildings and our assets from a centralized point of view. So I'm supportive of the concept. I'm just wondering if again, it's an area we can take time out and talk with the town about before just doing it on our own.
What are we talking about the town with on it? I have had discussions with Phil Bergeron, the director of DPW, and we actually had a similar survey like this or a similar report like this done last year for the Quinnesset Elementary School
Right.
roof. Not the same company, but very detailed, very expansive, because in some instances, our roofs, maybe the warranty is running out, but there could be information that, well, it's a great roof, it's in good shape, you've got 5 years left. So what do you mean? You mean for them paying for this, or?
No, my thought is that the town has buildings that they need to worry about the roofs too. And so if the town does similar kinds of diagnostic things for their assets, whether this is, again, something you can move to a more consolidated schedule where collectively between the town and school buildings, we're doing these periodic things collectively to lower just sort of the per building cost.
looking to gain economy of scale by doing more than one.
Thank you, John.
I can certainly look into that. I don't think we would, because this is priced out per school. So if we added the town buildings, and again, I can certainly ask, but it's not going to be cheaper on one side or the other likely because there's a cost. The infrared scan itself that's done, actually, those infrared scans we've had done on Quinnesset roof, and they were well over $1,000. So this company here happens to have the technology that they can do that in-house instead of outsourcing it. But I'm not sure how we would save any money, because it's mostly based on, per square foot of the building and the age of the building and whatnot. So certainly, whatever direction the school committee would like to move in for this.
Mrs. Avanzato and then Mr. Mudge.
Just very quickly, maybe I'm misunderstanding what Mr. Jones was saying, but I think we're already doing, with Mr. Bergeron having been an integral part of taking a look at our roofs, and he has done that repeatedly.
Yeah, I work very
Been a
closely.
team, hasn't it?
I work
Really?
very closely with Phil Bergeron, and, I think that the goal that I had here was that we could have some really good, solid reports that would help the school department in the years ahead so that we can plan for the decline of roofs in the building. There are several things that everybody's concerned about for children's housing, and, keep them warm, safe, and dry. That's what we're concerned about. And if we can try to get some information that says, you know what, X roof in 5 years, we really need to start planning for replacing that. Let's not wait 10 years when it's already this huge issue and we have problems and there are leaks. But my intent here was so that we would have something to be proactive in that, to present to the Asset Management Committee, to present to the town that says we should really be looking at this now and not waiting until we have an issue that, is critical.
Would this be something they'd be doing before school starts or after?
And actually, it doesn't really matter, but we would like to get it done. We're hoping to get it done in the next couple of weeks if we could get through tonight. If not, it's something that they can certainly do after hours.
Has facilities weighed in on it?
Yes, actually, we had I did not have a formal motion from them, but a week ago, I think it was, we had a facility subcommittee meeting. Steve Tremblay, our facilities manager, and I informed them of it, and they thought it was a very good idea because it would provide us with some solid outside report. Again, this is not a contractor who's saying you need to replace your roof. This is an independent roof analysis. And they thought the more information you have when you're trying to build a CIP, the better. So they were definitely in favor of the school committee considering it.
Well, I think, I liked what Mr. Jones said initially about coordinating this with the town, but now that you're pointing out that this was going to be something we were going to have done before school started, and the fact that, as you said, it's individually priced, that it may not go down, I think the thing that would concern me would be having it done prior to the students come in, especially since we have had a conversation with the town manager on this and the facilities committee. That would be, I could see the reasoning behind approving this today. Mr. Mudge.
I agree with Bob on looking at this from a town standpoint. This is one of these other things in consolidation where I think, we could, even by a letter to the town council, ask them to just take over the roof function, period. So we didn't have to worry about it. But that's a separate issue. I don't think it's really a great urgency in jumping into these things, because I can tell you for a fact that Davis Elementary School, Stony Lane, Forest Park, and Fishing Cove, those roofs were replaced with, I think, 25-year warranties some 7 years ago. So that's one thing. Number two, I would ask if would we possibly be voiding some warranty or anything else? And is there anything that says that we should take this action right now? I wholeheartedly agree we need a maintenance program. But in this particular case, I'm pretty sure these were 20, and Mrs. Avanzano may know this because she was involved with these things with me. Okay, they're either 20 or 25-year warranties on those roofs for those 4 schools. And again, they're, 7, 8 years old at the most. So I really would look at the urgency of that. And the other thing that really still bothers me completely is this thing with the high school. Here's another building that's 12 years old, 13 years old, and we probably had in fact, for everyone's information, we did have, shortly after the building was built, we had a problem with the roofs in the library, which were flooded or drained and so forth, which is terrible workmanship. And we still are paying for the ills of the town council's poor management of this school. Okay, we are still paying for those ills. And anything to do with the high school, I'd recommend that the town council pay for the thing. I mean, 12 years into this building, a $40 million project, okay, you would think the roofs would be okay.
I respect your opinion, Mr. Mudge, and I think actually you're kind of making our point, because although a roof might have 5 years or 10 years left on it, there could be some issues that will need to be addressed sooner rather than later. Like you said, we had some questionable workmanship in some areas, and I'm certainly not throwing any accusations to anybody, but this would help us so that we don't get to a point where it's critical and we're scrambling to put patches everywhere. And this is not a maintenance program. This would not provide a maintenance program. This would provide you with information on where you stand. For example, We've had one roof that was looked at that somebody said quickly, and this was not an independent, but it was someone who knows something about roofs that said, well, you know what, your warranty's out, but you probably have another 5 years left on this roof because it's been maintained and you know, there was good workmanship. So,
Well, again, I'm saying, like, we have probably 20 years left on these other 4 roofs.
not necessarily. You don't know that.
I
There
think-
could be a lot of damage to them. We have damage on a roof at the high school, and we should have 5 years left on that. And I don't think we have 25-year warranties, Mr. Mudge. I think 15 years is tops.
I think if you go back and look at these roofs, you'll think that they're at least 20 to 25 years, okay?
Busker, oh, I'm
But,
sorry.
again, all I'm saying is it really isn't the urgency to do this, so we could check out some of these things and maybe work with the town on this. And another indicator is, have we had roof problems with these new, you know, the Davisville L, the middle school, the Sony Lane, Forest Park, and, you know, Fishing Cove? Is there any other indication that says that? Now, we can do a physical inspection and see anything, but you know, if there's a problem, but again, I applaud you trying to do something like this, but I think it's kind of premature right now with the age of these roofs to invest this money, okay, at this particular time.
I see Mr. Buskard's hand and then Mr. Jones.
Thank you, Ms. Page. I've been fortunate enough to sit on the facility subcommittee and attended just about every meeting. I may have missed one or two, but I don't think there could be much more cooperation between Ms. King and Mr. Bergeron. I think they work together as a team. I think there's a lot of leveraging of ideas and philosophies and thoughts, and I think that where there have been opportunities to combine efforts, they're being done. I don't know that. Well, I agree, Mr. Jones, that, you know, there's an economy of scale that can be obtained in some instances. I don't know if this is one of them or not. It very well may be, but again, I don't know how the town goes about evaluating their roofs and if, for example, if they do infrareds on their roofs or not. And to your suggestion, Mr. Mudge, about 25-year roofs, there's no guarantee on a roof for 25 years. Roofs are 25-year rated, but they're guaranteed for 10 or 15 years.
I think we should check that. Wouldn't that be a nice thing to do before we put this money out?
Well, I'm pretty sure that's I'm accurate. I don't know that
I'm pretty sure I'm accurate, too.
I'm pretty sure I don't have to do any checking. There's roofs that are 25 years, but they're not guaranteed.
Warranted.
Warranted, guaranteed. Doesn't
Well,
matter.
did we check that out? Do we know
Mr.
that?
Buskardin has the floor.
Well,
Mr.
that's
Buskardin.
why
I would think that,
debate.
while I understand your point, I think that you're confusing guarantees, warranties, and life expectancy of roofs.
I think we ought to get the answer to that then before we.
Excuse me, I don't
make this
recall
investment.
interrupting you, Mr. Mudge,
Oh,
when you
just-
were speaking.
Okay.
Oh, can't we have a dialogue on this?
Can't.
All
We
right.
can't? Why not?
Gentlemen,
Why not?
gentlemen.
That's what we don't do here, is have a dialogue on issues.
Okay, this is not a dialogue right now. It is turning into argument. And Mr. Buskardin has the floor. Do you have anything else you would like to say, Mr.
No,
Buskardin?
I just would appreciate that when, you know, when people are speaking, that they're afforded the same courtesies that they're given them when they're speaking. That's all. Thank you.
Mr. Jones, and then
Thank-
Mrs. Avanzado.
Thank you. Linda, I probably wasn't making my point clear enough. What I was likening it to is, you know, there's a subdevelopment with 50 homes, and 10 of us get together and say, we're going to inspect our roofs, and, you know, maybe it might be worthwhile to know if you know, we have a homeowners association that thinks that all 50 should be looked at. And you know, as Mr. Buskardin said, maybe the town doesn't take that approach, and so if they don't, then obviously I applaud our efforts to do so. My only point was, I just was wondering, because we are paying this out of fund balance, that, you know, we're early into the fiscal year, there could be other competing priorities that might require fund balance, and before we lean too far forward and committing, you know, if this was budgeted funds, I probably would have less of an issue. But, you know, we might have other competing priorities, and if this is not pressing, you know, to get done, you know, can we take a short pause and just inquire with the town whether it makes sense to have, you know, a more consolidated approach to us, even if we're obviously splitting the costs. And perhaps there isn't economies of scale. I don't know. I'm just throwing out the questions to say, you know, is this something we should investigate? Because I look at it and just go, you know, I would assume the town would want to check out their roofs too, and maybe not. But I just throw the idea out there that, again, if this is not a priority, given, I think it's something that should be done, but, we might have other priorities here in 2 weeks and 4 weeks and sit back and go, maybe that's more worthy of 25,000. And so again, while I don't disagree with the concept, maybe I'm just arguing for the ability to investigate it a little more.
Avanzado, and then I know Dr. Ajay had something.
Just very briefly, I wonder what Mr. Bergeron's response or interest in it was during the joint meeting, since he was there, I assume, during part of the discussion.
I didn't ask him if he wanted to get in with the town on all of it. I asked, we discussed about how valuable he thought this information might be for the Asset Management Committee, because he certainly is in charge of that committee. Information that he felt would be valuable going forward. But I didn't ask him if he wanted to do the same for the town buildings.
Before I let Phil speak, I just want to recognize the fact that we're doing this at all, because we have had so many roof issues over the last 10, 15 years in this district, where we had some serious situations with kids, where we had to get them out of buildings real quick. We had a lot of problems, and right up until we had some issues a couple of years ago with Quidnesset with leaking. And so I really want to recognize this. I think this is a very worthwhile thing to do and look at, and it's a safety issue, and I'm very interested in continuing along this path. But I am interested also in, if the town were interested, I would have thought they would have put their 2 cents in already and joined us in it, so.
My suggestion would be to go ahead and approve it, and also to approve of Mary and I writing to Mr. Embry and Phil Bergeron, and just inquiring if they are interested in getting in on this purchase. We can hold and wait for them to get on board, see if we save some money, and if they're quickly say, thanks but no thanks, then we just go ahead, and we've already got the approval. That works for everybody.
All right, so we don't have a motion on the table. Is there anyone, I see your hand, Mr. Mudge. Is there anyone who'd like to put a motion on the table for further discussion?
I would
Mrs.
like just to
Avanzado.
ask,
No, Mrs. Avanzado.
I'm going to offer a motion to approve this item with the proviso, as the superintendent just suggested, that he and Mrs. King approach the town and ask them whether they'd like to participate with us after the vote.
And if they say no?
Do
we come
You got the
back, or-
approval. No, I say go forward. That's my own opinion, but that would be my motion.
Do I have a second? Okay, Mr. Mudge.
yeah, have we checked out to see if we have somebody up doing a visual inspection and got a price here, $26,000, then doing scans, that we would, in fact, jeopardize the warranty, the existing warranties in these buildings?
There would not be. We're not making cuts into the roof. We're not
I said,
doing
I
any
haven't checked the
damage.
contract, so I don't know that. Okay?
I do. There wouldn't be. There'd be no warranty voids. We're not authorizing any work. We're authorizing just a review. They're not going to be cutting into anything. They're not going to be doing anything that jeopardizes anything.
Great, is there any more discussion on the motion? All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed?
No?
Motion passes. Lorene, I just want to make sure that in my clumsiness of saying D5 and E5, that we have passed E5.
This one just now is D5. Oh, I see what you're saying.
Those in favor?
Well, I think we just misheard Mr. Jones. when
I'm
he-
just making sure that you didn't write down that we had exempted E5 rather than D5.
Originally, I did, but I just changed it. Do you think we need to, I just assume we misheard you, not that he,
Do I have a motion to approve E5?
Second.
All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Great, thank you. Thank you. Just wanted to make sure. All right, that brings us to unfinished, the end of the consent agenda and unfinished business, the CIP. And how did how are our summer work projects going?
It's actually amazing how quickly, from week to week, when we have our construction meetings, how much these contractors get done. There are so many subcontractors, there's so many people involved, and they've had such a short time frame, and there is a lot for them to wrap up, pieces for them to wrap up over the next couple of weeks, but Track Builders has done a really great job as a general contractor. We've all communicated very well. I've attended just about all of the construction meetings with our facilities supervisor, and it's a really great group. So with that being said, we are beginning to move the principals back into their buildings starting this week. So that would be Fishing Cove, Stony Lane tomorrow, Davisville Middle School on Thursday, Wickford Middle School on Friday, and then next week on Wednesday is when Quinnesset will get in. Quinnesset is a little bit later time frame. We knew that that would happen. The floor covering is down. It's about 75% complete, and they're going to be bringing the furniture back in. So that's the office staff that's going back in. We have not yet authorized any other staff to be in the building because, quite frankly, the building is still under control of the contractor, and we can't have all other staff in the building, but that's going to be coming very soon also. We have two issues that we were concerned in the facility subcommittee at the beginning that could be a timing issue, and that would be the elevator at Fishing Cove and the elevator at Davisville Middle School. Neither one are going to be available for the start of school. However, they will be operational in the second or third week of September. The architect, Phil Bergeron, and I have met with the principals of those two buildings to make sure that any accommodations that need to be made for students that require that elevator are made, and luckily there are not. The students that we know of at this point are all on the lower levels, so they're going to be all set. The other issue is that Mr. Partridge, from our project manager, our architect, is going to have to report to RIDE and to the Governor's Commission on Disabilities about this delay. But we do have the information, and that's going to go a lot more smoothly. We were concerned we might have to move some classrooms around, but we're not going to have to. Other than that, it really is going to be a race to the finish. We knew it was going to be. GCA Services has been very, very flexible with their timing. They're starting to get into the buildings to get them cleaned up, to make them presentable. Again, there won't be any floor stripping in some of these buildings. There just isn't any time for that. But they're going to be cleaning up the dust and anything that's not presentable. Our IT staff is going to start getting back in there next week. And, you know, our maintenance guys will be available for what any of the principals think they might need after the fact. So everything has been going very well. The facility subcommittee has been updated on the progress, and we'll have a further update for them on Thursday.
Great. I did notice that the building, the high school looked extremely well. Nice shiny floors when we came in, which was always good to see. I hate to spring things on you, but I am going to spring perhaps that we can, through email, set up some sort of time that the school committee can take a tour of a few of the buildings later, that to just see the work that's been done. That would be helpful to get an idea. So I won't suggest any dates right now. You can tell us when that would be a possibility, and then we can kind of see what fits into people's schedules best.
Absolutely.
Any other questions, comments? All right. So that brings us to...
Excuse me, I had
Yes.
one.
Mr. Myers.
On Davisville, Davisville Middle School, what is the plan to remove the asbestos tile on the floors?
It's done.
You did do it? I thought that wasn't
They
being...
did some of it. They had to pull a majority of it, but there was some of it done in the science classrooms and whatnot. So there is likely to be some money left from this bond because of contingency and whatnot, and there have been no change orders what to speak of. But that's a very large, that's a kind of large project, so we're going to have to review that at a later date. But some of that was done.
Excuse me, how much was done?
I don't have that specific, but I can certainly send that to you.
Yeah, I'm very concerned about that because, you know, when we met back in June, I was very concerned about that, and then I found out, which was never, you know, we were never advised of, that apparently RIDE or somebody waived the requirement, and it wasn't a safety requirement. That's why I bring the question up, because that was the reason what was in there in the first place.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought that when we were at a facilities subcommittee meeting a while back, I think back in February, you didn't think it had to be removed. So that must have been somebody else that I was thinking of.
No, absolutely. You're absolutely correct. You're absolutely correct. But we said we insisted because it was a safety item, and then it gets dropped out of the contract, and the school committee's never advised of that.
It wasn't a safety item, but
What?
I think we have been through this, that really was, after those bids all went out and everything came back, those were items, there were several items that had to be reviewed because the bids were too high. They were more money than what we had.
So this item, there was a safety item to start with that we said we had to do.
It's not a safety issue,
Excuse
because
me.
RIDE would not have
We-
allowed it to be taken
we-
out if it were a safety issue.
Excuse me.
You said yourself that it didn't need to be
You're
done.
absolutely correct,
This is a
but we were
question
told
period,
it
so
was a
this is- do you
safety
have a
issue,
question?
and it had to be done, because I was saying, suggesting we use the money someplace else, like perhaps, fixing something else in town with a priority. And the last I knew, the information given to us, the contract had the removal of the asbestos in it when it came to us. And after that, apparently, somebody, without talking to the school committee, removed that requirement.
Columbo's in the middle of solving a crime here. Let him finish, please.
All right, so, Dr. O'Shea.
At the last minute in acquiring the bid, and I don't know this for a fact, but I'm pretty sure that we did mention this to the school committee, that when the bids were approved, the asbestos piece was, it's not that it wasn't a safety item, but it was a very expensive piece, and we were running short. So RIDE allowed us to include the Quidnesset floor, which was a much less expensive piece, in place of the Davisville tile. And because the carpet at Quidnesset was more of an issue right now than the tile at Davisville. It's not that it's not a safety issue. Eventually, it's going to be getting done, and it should be. But because of the logistics of getting this in under price and still have that amount of money that you need in case things go wrong that Mary just talked about, that they allowed that switch to happen.
Dr. Gauthier, I am pleased that it did happen, and I said
Thank you
for a
very
long
much.
time that it should have, but I thought that the school committee should have been notified, because I don't believe we ever
Well,
were.
I believe we have, but if we haven't, I apologize.
Mrs. Avanzato.
Yes. I personally don't want to supervise the building projects to that degree. I like to be told, after the fact, if you had to do something, which you have done, and I appreciate that. I just asked whether this facilities subcommittee knew about that change and was had discussed it. in their
Absolutely,
meetings.
because they need to approve all of that for RIDE to move forward. So
Okay.
that was all done in the first 2 weeks of May.
I just wanted to establish that. Thank you.
And I believe in May, we had a meeting in which we discussed all the projects that were listed out for the summer, and that was part of the listing of everything. Just
I don't
remember,
believe
this
that's
is,
correct.
this is a meeting where we are to have a discussion, but it is not the meeting where we are supposed to play got you. So I
This
just
is
want
not
to
got
remind
you.
everybody about that.
Doesn't like it.
All right, so our next item we have here is bus contracts. We've had a request from bus contractor Tony Mumford to purchase a new bus, and the recommendation in front of us is to recommend approval based on 3-year contract through the end of the current Bus Contractors Association contract ending June 30th, 2016. Is there a motion to that effect?
So moved.
A second?
Discussion. Yes, Mrs. Avanzato.
Has this been discussed with the Mumfords, just with the contractors? I assume it has.
This has been discussed in the meeting that was had in the month of July.
Very good. Okay, just wanted to make
With
sure.
the
Thank you very much.
contractors in general. All right, if there's no further discussion, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries. Parent survey, Dr. Ajay.
In your packet, I have enclosed a brief parent survey per your request from from our last meeting in June. The parent survey basically, and it's so brief, I think I can read it all to you here. We're asking, saying that the administration and school committee is interested in learning more about the opinions of parents. The North Kingstown School Department as it makes its priorities for future planning. And we ask that, 4 very basic questions. just to get a sense of who's responding, the schools your kids go to, and the grades that they're in. Those are two of the questions already. And I just lost the whole thing here. Thank you. And the heart of the survey is basically on a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being your lowest and 10 being your highest priority. Please prioritize areas in which you would prefer the North Kingstown School Department to focus future investment of funds with available resources. The point being that the resources may be available or may not, but it would be interesting to the committee to understand what areas parents are most concerned about investing in the future. And so these things range from categories like advanced coursework options for students, arts and music education, career training, coursework, class sizes, communication to parents, effective elective course options, extra academic help, extracurricular activities, professional development for staff, school buildings, school calendar, school start times, school safety, sports programs, technology for student learning, and transportation. And question 4 asks which of these are your highest priority. There may be a number of them that they list. This is a very high priority for me. Which is your highest, and what would you suggest the school department do about this particular item? How would you like it to be addressed? That way we can get a sense of exactly what it asks for. What are the priorities for parents in our community right now? If anything should stick out, we would have some kind of clear indication as to that many of our parents feel a certain item or a few items are major priorities for them.
All right, is there any questions or comments on the survey? Mr. Jones?
I'm sorry, John, do you want to?
No, good, Bob, that's fine.
Yeah, just for the other committee, I spoke briefly with Dr. Auger about this. I guess, my concern is that, if you haven't looked at it yet, that, maybe we take 2 weeks and engage Dr. Auger on it. I agree we want to keep it short. I agree we want to minimize. We had a discussion. We obviously don't want to introduce any potential biases. My couple of concerns would be, 7-point scale versus 10, and some small things, I think, because from a parent's perspective, is there some contextual stuff that perhaps needs to be included in a narrative? For example, I really don't know how much we spend on career training coursework, so, whether we should invest more or not in that. If I'm a parent whose child is in a sports program that's funded, I'm pretty happy. If I'm not, maybe it's not. So I just think maybe we should I don't think really parents are going to be engaged anyways till after school starts. The new parents will sign up on the listserv. That I think it's a good start by Dr. Auger, and it addresses, I think, what the basic desire of the committee was, but maybe we take 2 weeks and engage within ourselves and with Dr. Auger, and then maybe come up with any changes for the next meeting, so we'll be ready to launch once, school has basically gotten going.
I'm fine with that.
Yeah, I agree, Bob.
Mr.
That's great.
Bussgardner?
I think it's a good idea. Selfishly, only because I wasn't here at the meeting when this was all presented, and that's my fault, not yours. But I would like a chance to go over it and just kick it around and see if there's anything we can, improve upon, if you don't mind.
Sure.
The intent was to wait a couple of weeks into the school year anyway. So everyone's kind of settled in, and then send this out. So we have time.
Excellent.
Is there any other comments or suggestions? All right. Well, please make sure you get those back to Dr. Auger so that we can perhaps have some sort of a direction we can send upon by the next meeting. That would be good. All right. That brings us to policies. The only policy that you have in front of you today is the annual one, the JLCE for emergency and first aid and infectious diseases. This came directly from our district doctor, who went over this and made the changes along with our head nurse, who basically collaborated in saying, yes, these are the changes and the updates we need to make. This is more of, this is a medical policy as to how things to be done. And so my only involvement was requesting that they make the changes and then make sure that they were in a form that the committee could see what changes were made. So to ask for your approval.
I'd offer a motion to approve.
Second.
Is there any further discussion? Okay, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, motion carries. Great. That brings us to our correspondence and reports. So at this time, I am looking for a motion to adjourn to executive session.
So moved. Second.
Beautiful.
All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Thank you, everyone.
Are we going back to the library?
Ask Lorraine.
Hey, Lorraine?
Lorraine, do you want to stay here?
She's down on the floor. Hey, Lorraine? Are we staying here, or are we going to go back to the library?